In this video, we're going to be looking at positive externalities. So just before we do that, I just want to explain with one question about negative externalities. This question asks you how an alcopops tax is designed to achieve a more efficient allocation of resources. So let's say it's a 5-mark question. How does an alcopops tax is designed to achieve a more efficient allocation of resources? Well, the alcopops tax, should write tax here, sorry, is designed to internalize the negative externality in consumption in the form of binge drinking, violence, and its associated ill effects. So explain what the idea of the alcopops tax is to start off with. By taxing alcopops, it raises production costs and forces up the relative price of alcopops. So you've made the link of what it does to production, what it's done to relative prices. This encourages consumers to substitute away from these products and hopefully towards less damaging substances. The tax should therefore lead to fewer resources, such as land and capital, being used in the production of alcopops. So tax sales fall from Q1 to Q2 if you were doing it on a graph, and more resources are allocated to the production of less damaging beverages, leading to a more efficient allocation of resources. This occurs because there is no longer an over-allocation of resources to the production of goods with negative externalities. The nation's resources are therefore more likely to be allocated in a way that maximises national welfare. A similar question, explain how an increase in the level of alcopops tax on alcopops may influence the allocation of resources. Define what the alcopops is and explain that it's levied on producers. It increases the relative price, which then passes on to consumers. This will reduce profit margins for businesses, and resources, land, labour and capital will be switched into other less harmful substances. This is explain what the negative externality is. And unfortunately, the tax is often ineffective because people are likely to just shift into other things like beer, spirits and wines because of the relatively low cost of production, but they have similar detrimental effects on society. So while in theory the tax should reduce consumption, because of the inelastic demand and because it's only levied on one type of alcohol, it may not be successful. So positive externalities. This occurs when the consumption or production of a good or service provides a benefit to a third party. In free markets, producers will allocate resources to these areas because they don't consider the third-party externalities. Important to remember that these goods are still allocated in a free market because you can force business people to pay and you can still make a profit from them, but not enough people would consume or produce these goods with positive externalities without some form of government intervention. So in free markets, producers often under-allocate resources to goods with third-party benefits. So the social benefit is equal to the private plus the external benefit. So the social benefits include the benefits enjoyed by a country that are not economic in nature. For example, the benefits of education, which may lead to more social harmony, less crime. And the social costs are costs borne by a country that are non-economic in nature, such as the depletion of natural resources, which are externalities. So whenever you use the word social, we're talking about both the private and the external. So positive externalities in production and consumption. If we're looking at positive externalities in production, they're when firms produce goods and services that accrue some benefit onto other consumers or other businesses or the government that are not involved in the transaction. So when we invest in research and development, if it's into better medication, the main third-party benefit would be those suffering from whatever illness we develop research into. So if it's into skin cancer treatment, someone with skin cancer would be the main third-party benefactor. If the research and development is into better technology, then the third-party benefit may be other businesses who can use that technology to also improve the profitability of their businesses. Training employees, the third-party benefits will be the fact that we have a more productive workforce, which could boost the economy, create more tax. If those people leave your profession or their job and go work with another firm, they get the benefits of their skills. So it can lead to more competition in the labour market, which may keep prices down. Other examples of positive externalities in production. Beekeepers setting up businesses near food producers. The idea of that would be that they will pollinate the neighbouring trees and therefore increase the yield of those trees. So if a beekeeper sets up his bees near someone else's business, they can pollinate the trees and increase production. Positive externalities in consumption occur when we consume a good or service, and that has a third-party benefit for another third party. So education is a really good example. The third-party benefits don't come from the producer. So like if I'm sitting in class and teaching by myself, that's not helping. It's only when people consume education, or basically the benefits from smarter students. That can include more tax, less crime, lower unemployment, increased productivity, less health concerns for society, etc., etc. So the private benefit is the fact that you know more about the world, that you might be able to generate a better income.
but the third-party benefits are all the benefits for the economy, for crime rates, for non-material living standards. Landscaping your garden might be the benefits might accrue to your neighbours and increase their property price. Vaccinations, by vaccinating your children, you're not passing on the disease to third parties, and therefore that's helping to reduce overall illness, which could then have flow-on effects to benefits for less sick days, employees at work leave missing, increased productivity, increased economic growth, but the main one be that you're not infecting other children with the vaccinations. All these also have positive externalities, whether it be reducing climate change, reducing carbon emissions, again reducing carbon emissions, and improving the education of society. So merit goods are basically goods and services that result in social benefits for society. It's assumed that everyone should have access to them, but in a free market they won't be provided in sufficient quantities. So the idea is it's more efficient for everyone to have access to these, but they will be provided in a free market. So they're not public goods, they are excludable, they are rivalrous, but they're not produced in sufficient quantities. So schools, hospitals, libraries would all be provided in a free market, but not to the level we would like them to be. So they're often subsidised by the government. This is designed to reduce costs and make them more widely available. So for example, education is a merit good. It will only ensure that production takes place without government intervention if the private benefits exceed the private costs. So say it costs you $15,000 to go to school. If you think the benefit you're going to be receiving is only $10,000, then you're not going to go to school. So the government might subsidise your education, $6,000. They might subsidise the producer. They lower their price to $9,000. Then you go to school, and therefore there's a more optimal allocation of resources in the economy and more optimal level of education. So the additional benefits that accrue to society more generally once a person receives an education, we don't take them into account, and therefore we may not be prepared to pay the additional price. The government therefore has a solution. They will do things like subsidising education, directly providing it through public schools, minimum school leaving ages, providing HECS help in order to internalise the positive externality, which is the idea of that is to make sure production and consumption occur at a socially optimal level. Okay, we'll talk about government intervention in the next video.